Welcome to Natural Horsemanship Solutions. I'm Lindsey Partridge, and today we're working with Jac. Jac is a quarter horse gelding that's been having problems doing some crow hopping and some bucking. You can see a little bit of footage of him here in the beginning stages of being worked with, where he just gets really tense and anxious at the canter. So we're going to work with his owner today. This is Tracey. She's going to be working with Jac and just showing you some of the exercises that we've been doing with him to help eliminate this crow hopping and bucking that you see that he used to do. And this is working now on his 7th training session. So you can see what he looks like now after 7 sessions. And before we got to this point, there was some groundwork that we did. We established on the ground that we have trust and respect and leadership. So Tracey did some work getting him to back up and moving just his front end and moving just his hind end, and as well sending him out on circles and making sure that he can do walk, trot, canter on the line with no bucks before we even try to do in the saddle. Whenever you have a horse that's bucking, particularly at the canter, you always want to double check that the horse is physically sound and as well that your tack is fitting. So that's something that we also did in the early stages to make sure that there wasn't a physical reason why Jac was acting this way. So one of the things that we really try to do with horses that have a problem with anxiousness is that we try to give them a focus. So you can see here that Tracey's doing a lot of changes of directions and some circles, really trying to keep his focus on her. So she's watching his ears, checking if he's flicking ears back at her, asking questions, or if he's just distracted and has both ears flicking forwards. So we always want to make sure that we have our horse's attention. And then when she asks for these little canter transitions, she does a little bit of canter, and then before it gets bad, she brings him back down to trot or down to walk and gives him a reward for being really good. You'll notice with Jac, sometimes Tracey offers him to have some grass, and the way she gives the cue to have grass is where she'll actually make it a different cue for him than when it's just a halt. So instead she'll throw away the rein and start to rub him, and then he knows it's okay to have grass as a reward. When you're working with anxious horses, it's important to really make sure they understand what is comfortable and what is not comfortable. So we want the right thing to be comfortable and the wrong thing to be uncomfortable. So when we're working with Jac, when he's doing the right thing, which is going for a nice canter transition and a nice canter, we want to reward him for doing that, and the reward has to be to quit. Sometimes when we work with horses, we get so excited that something's going well, we want to keep going, we want to use it all up. But then you just provoke your horse to get to a point where they say, hey, enough of that. So instead of getting to that point, you just recognize that the horse has done something nice for you, done something positive for you, and you want to reward that behavior. So you can see that Tracey was able to get another really calm and relaxed transition. And he broke into trot there, but that's okay when you're working with an anxious horse that sometimes explodes into the canter. You don't want to get after them and make them nervous about that transitions. So if they don't go into canter right away, you're not going to give them a kick and yell at them or get aggressive with them, because that could just cause them to explode forward and maybe do even more crow hopping. So instead you just collect yourself, get your balance back, and then when you're ready and you're organized, you can go ahead and ask for canter again, and you just stay patiently persistent until you get what you want. And then the way Jac will know his reward will be when he gets to stop and have that release. So you can see there Tracey was just really patiently persistent and asked for that canter, but very politely. And then she's able to get a nice canter, and then immediately she stops and rewards him. So that way he knows he can offer up some really nice canter, and we're not going to make him do 10 laps. Instead, we just want a little bit. And then the goal over time is to build up these pieces of canter, so that way he's cantering for a whole loop, and then he's cantering for 2 loops, and then keep switching it up. So that way sometimes we're cantering longer distances, and then sometimes we're cantering shorter distances. And that way Jac doesn't fall into a routine and he doesn't get anxious about it. Another piece about not falling into a routine is that we don't get ourselves into a pattern of doing walk, trot, then canter on the right lead, then canter on the left lead, and then we're done our session. So instead with Jac, what we're trying to do is get him to understand that it's just about communication. So it's just a bunch of patterns put together, changes of direction, circles, transitions from walk, trot, halt, and canter, and they're all mixed up and in between. So we'll do some cantering, then we'll go back to some trot, continue to do some changes of direction, throw in a little bit more canter, so that way he doesn't start to get really anxious towards the end of our ride, when typically a lot of people do their canter. One of the other things that we like to do with horses that tend to be anxious to help give them that focus is to start to do some jumps with them. So even though Tracey doesn't necessarily have the goal of jumping, she knows that giving her horse variety and giving him another focus and another challenge is just good for their partnership, an extra test. So by doing some jumps with Jac, we just make cantering a natural fluid thing that just happens because of the jump, and he throws in some canter strides, and it just feels very natural, because when a horse starts jumping, the natural transition should be for them to land and go for a canter, as long as you come in with enough pace. So this is just another technique you can use to help distract your horse and take away a little bit of that anxiety, make it a little bit more fun for them by giving them something different to do. And one of the things you'll notice too is that Tracey's riding in just a rope halter bridle. She's not using a bit in Jac's mouth. Sometimes when we have horses that get anxious at the canter or just anxious being ridden at all, it can be because we have too much pressure in the horse's mouth. Horses are prey animals. They don't like to be trapped. They don't like to have too much pressure put on them. And the horse's mouth is actually quite a sensitive area. And whenever we start horses in natural horsemanship, we actually start them without a bit at all in their mouth. And then there's a period of time when the horse just holds the bit in their mouth, but you don't actually use reins on the bit, you still use reins with the rope halter. So one of the other first things that we did with Jac was that we took out the bridle and the bit that Tracey was using and replaced it with this rope halter. And sometimes that can make people a little bit nervous because they think they're going to lose some control. But actually you gain a bit of control because the horse is no longer having that first reaction of, oh no, this is so much pressure. Instead, the horse can focus because they're no longer getting anxious about that pressure. So by taking that bit out of Jac's mouth, we took away one reason that could be causing him anxiousness. And then that way we're only dealing with the canter. One of the other things that we had to do with Tracey as well was just double check her position, because sometimes when we get going into the canter, if you get a couple crow hops, that can make you nervous and tense, and then you start to pinch with your knees and tense up on the reins, and that can cause the horse to make the problem even worse because you're getting tense and then that gets them more tense. So we had to do some work on our position to make sure that we're sitting relaxed and comfortably, that our hips are moving with our horse, and that our hands aren't clenching up on the reins. So putting all of these factors together, the groundwork, making sure the tack's properly fitting, checking that he can canter on the ground, giving him a focus in the saddle, giving him a variety of things that he can do like jumping and turns and transitions, and then rewarding him for those little bits of really positive canter by letting him stop and relax. And these have all helped to make Jac what he is now, and you can see that you don't even see any crow hopping anymore. It's just relaxed canter transitions, and this is something that Tracey and Jac can continue to build on since it's only been 7 sessions, and you can just imagine the progress that they're going to get to see when they keep working together with natural horsemanship. You'll notice too that Jac can really tell the difference between when Tracey drops her reins to let him have the reward versus when she just stands there for a halt. So you don't have to worry about your horse tugging always for the grass. Just be very clear with your body language when they're allowed to eat and when they're not allowed to eat. And knowing that they can eat soon is actually going to make them more eager to work for you, so they get that next little break.